First, we'll be going through regs and whatnot, and then Kevin and Jay will be covering some topics later. There is a sign-in sheet going around, so if y'all can make sure to take care of that. And then for anyone who's watching over YouTube, and you're watching right now, and these slides, we'll be posting them up on the Wikipedia site. For those of y'all who are not familiar with the Wikipedia, if you just meet me afterwards, I will email them to you, or get them to you in one form or another, because it's a little hard to see them on this video, I imagine. And then we'll have a little bit for questions and discussion at the end. And just a reminder, this Saturday, starting at 9 o'clock, there will be a cleanup where we're going to be taking apart a couple of gliders, doing an annual, and having food. So it'll be awesome. All right. So I'll be starting off with an intro here, a little bit on aeronautical decision making into regs, and then Kevin will be talking about detailed pre-flights. Jay will be covering just general launch procedures and whatnot, and then I have a little presentation to do about running airspace. Last time Don Connor did it, you may have all remembered, and I just filling in for him pretty much. All right, so the FAA definitions of pre-research management and aeronautical decision making. They tend to get pretty lengthy about it, but I prefer to have a little bit more of an alternative approach. I like to call it more like risk management. And essentially, what I like to do is constantly ask questions. Always be a skeptic and ask questions. What's the risk going to be? What's going to be happening? 3 iterations in the future as you're flying along. For example, where's my next source lift? Where are landable fields? How's my workload? What can I do to reduce my cockpit workload? Because as we all know, the more we get overwhelmed, the harder it is for us to handle a given situation. And then pretty much you can see the situations there. The common risk factors: pilot, airplane, environment, and operation. Environment being stuff like weather conditions, other traffic, operation being the regulatory side of things. The aircraft, pre-flight, how airworthy it is, and then the pilot, looking into yourself, medical fitness, psychological fitness, the IMSIF checklist. If you haven't heard of that before, it's illness, medication, stress, alcohol, then fatigue and eating. And that's just kind of a little mental checklist to go through to make sure you're at your tip-top shape pretty much. And then the general process that's going through this risk management is you're going from situation to action to response, just a repeating cycle. And the whole idea is just to keep on evaluating risk, what's coming and what's already there. All right, and then along with that, I got onto pilot error a little bit. NTSB is always reporting that accidents are caused by majority pilot error because it's true. And you can see a little breakdown of exactly what percentages and what areas. And the most interesting I saw was unprofessional attitudes. It's kind of interesting. So, it's just the way you feel and how you're acting in general has a very big outcome on your decision making. So with that in mind, get to know yourself, how you think, how you rationalize. Do you have any hazardous attitudes that you should be aware of? You may or may not realize that. And then how much you can handle with your cockpit workload. And then from there, you need to kind of have a mental picture or maybe even a written list of personal minimums to go by. Otherwise known as your comfort zone.
All aircraft accidents or just gliders?
This is all aircraft accidents. Yep. All right, and then on to FARs. So got quite a few of them. I kind of designed them for both airplane and glider crowds, so if there's some airplane stuff in there, we'll cover that, and then I'll also cover the glider stuff. And I may skip through a few as time allows here. So I would like to ask the questions just like how I brought up with the risk management. Is the pilot legal? Is the plane and equipment legal? And is the operation legal? And you can see the items there. So regarding pre-flight action, this is my favorite right here. And you notice the ones I put in bold and caps, all available information for that flight, the pilot shall become familiar with. Now, and then it lists exactly what particular things should be included, but that's kind of like a coverall. Pretty much anything you can think of, you should know about it. In particular, takeoff and landing distances, either determined from the aircraft flight manual or other reliable information. So from our point of view at the glider port for doing tow planes and glider flights in tow, we just know that based on experience. But I figured I'd try to come up with some kind of rule of thumb. You all probably remember I asked about this at the tow pilots meeting. I just figured I'd try to put some numbers to reason here. So first off, these distances and climb rates are assuming standard pressure, 29.92 inches, and then a gross Atlantic or ASK-21 on average, and then a tow plane with average tow pilot full loaded fuel in it. And this is the average between the Cub, the Call Air, and the Pawnee. And then assuming no wind, lift sink, and slope, and then we're accounting for a grassy field. So I listed them by density altitude right there. So on average, we're flying anywhere between 1,000 and 3,000 feet density altitude. So you can see that corresponds with about 900 to 1,000 feet takeoff roll. That's the amount of roll you need to get the wheels off the ground. And then after that point, you're climbing anywhere from 540 to 480 feet per minute on average. And then you can see how the temperature corresponds over there. And then if you look at the very bottom row right there, that covers the average trend per 1,000 feet of density altitude. So you can see every 1,000 feet density altitude, your takeoff roll will be about 50 feet longer, and your climb rate will be about 33 feet a minute, of course. So it's just kind of interesting to see that there. And that way we're covered with our little regulation check mark. So now on to is the pilot legal. So a lot of this probably is pretty familiar to you. I like to break it down into documents that you'd have to have on your person, currency, including flight review, your medical certificate, medical well-being, and then along with just already safe personal minimums like we discussed before.
Point on the documents, if you have a paper FAA license, it expires the end of this month, you have to have the credit card type.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody check.
And you can do that on FAA.gov, or they have a phone number, I believe, on the website. I'm not entirely sure what that is, though. All right. So, as you all know, you have to have a pilot certificate for the appropriate category and class for the airplane you're flying, along with any endorsements, a medical certificate if you're flying a tow plane, class 3 privileges at least, a photo ID, and then for student pilots, you need a logbook plus endorsements. All right, so recent flight experience, this all hits home pretty well. 3 takeoffs and landings, and in case of gliders, it's pretty much only landings. Category and class, so that means you have to have currency independent for gliders and airplanes. And for tailwheel, it has to be the full stop. And then another thing I like to point out is you have to be a sole manipulator of the controls. So whoever has actually flown the plane and touched the plane to the ground is the one that logs the landing. So there's some debate on how you take that from a point of view of an instructor and a student. Technically, if the student does the landing, the instructor couldn't log it. All right, and then the recent tow experience requirements for tow pilots. 100 hours airplane, 200 hours total, and then the 3 actual simulated tows. And then along with currency, you have to have 3 of those within 24 calendar months. And flight review, everyone's going to have these coming up pretty soon along with the currency. So last Saturday, everyone was a flurry trying to get their currency up in order, and I'm sure flight reviews are soon to follow. So that'll be every 24 calendar months, you have to at least have an hour flight and ground. If gliders, you're doing 3 flights. And then covering regulations and maneuvers according to what you and your instructor want to cover. Or you can take a check ride within 24 months. That's usually what I've ended up doing. Or complete a wings program like I did with Peter lately. All right, medical certificate. So of course this isn't required for glider operations, but for the tow pilots it's equally important. If you're under age 40, you get 60 calendar months